So, Ayinde, what do you want to talk about today?
Today, I want to talk about employee-generated content.
Really? Employee-generated content?
What do you want to talk about today?
Okay. That's interesting. Today, I'm going to talk about should we be a digital marketing agency? And that stems from my conversation with Google Gemini. So let's hear it.
So you spoke to Gemini before you spoke to me.
Well, that's an interesting thing. That I will tell you how that came about, right? I'll tell you how that came about. So there's a whole story behind it.
Okay, and let's get started.
All right, good. So as you know, you and I both know, I walk, right? That's something that I do. So on yesterday, which was Sunday, I was doing a standard walk. I asked my wife to come with me, but she wasn't interested. So I said, let's go walk the neighborhood and take a nice, cool stroll. And when I walk, generally, I tend to listen to podcasts. And recently, I've been listening to Marketing School. That is Neil Patel and Eric Sue as NP Digital. So I've been trying to diversify my podcast listenings. And so I'm listening to him. They have a very short podcast, probably like, 18 minutes. It's supposed to be 10 minutes, but it never is 10 minutes, 18 minutes. And he, of course, is a digital marketer. That's what he is, his expertise. And I had begun to think about it. And the more he was talking, and I was saying, are we supposed to be a digital marketing agency? And I'm on the walk, and I'm thinking, I need to kind of explore this a little more. What should I do? And I decided that, you know what I'll do? I have to talk with Ayinde about this. I took out my phone to write down the note. And then I said, hey, we have a Google Workspace account. Let me just talk to Gemini and see what they come up with, because I wanted to define what a digital marketing agency was. And so that's what I did. While I'm walking now, this is me walking through the neighborhood, I download Gemini to my phone, right? I open it, and as soon as I open it, it jumps straight into something called Gemini Live.
Right.
And it asks me to pick a voice. So I scroll through several voices, and I end up on a voice that I like. And it asks me, what do I want to talk about today? Almost the same question we ask at the start of our podcast. And I begin having a conversation about digital marketing. And so that was very interesting. Okay, what do you think so far?
Interesting process. I guess we're going to be encountering some of these new processes, but it sounds good so far.
All right. Okay, good. So start to talk to it about digital marketing, and I'm describing what we do and the things that we might be involved in and all those different things. And then I had an idea. I had a thought. I said to myself, I wonder if I could just tell it, go look at the website. And I asked it, I said, could you just go look at the website and see what we do? And it said, sure, I could do that. I said, do I have to type it in, or can I just tell you the URL? So just say it to me. And I tell him radiatstudios.com. And within a matter of seconds, he goes to the website. He says, I see your strategic marketing and production company. And these are the services you offer. And he said, that's definitely in line with digital marketing. And he begins to talk about this stuff. So I'm like, no, honestly, I know people have done this already. And I know, if you have ChatGPT, there was the agent that you can speak to, but ChatGPT is very limited in how long the conversation can be. There's a limit daily, but we have an account, so we can go as long as we want to. Mm-hmm. And interestingly, while that was happening, over about the length of a 30-minute stint in the middle of my walk, because I was walking pretty slow,
right,
I was able to talk to Gemini about whether or not we should be a digital marketing agency, what type of content we would produce, and what that might look like. And I kind of went all the way around full circle to talking about what a product that we have to release soon, videos for CEOs, right? And what that structure might look like. Right. And it gave me a whole framework and executive summary of the CEO thought leadership model, which I know we talked about this already and we have worked out how it actually works in real life, but I thought it was so interesting that having the conversation, and mainly what the AI does, what Gemini did, it asked me a ton of questions to pull the thing out of my brain as to what I feel could work and what I can't work, and where I couldn't fill in the gaps, it tried to use some general knowledge to fill in the gaps.
Right.
Yeah, and so do you want me to read what it said?
Yeah, let's hear some of what you and Gemini, or Gemma, as our friend in media, have been calling her.
Gemma? Oh no,
Oh,
no.
yeah, you talked about this veteran journalist a few weeks ago.
Julian Rogers, yeah.
Julian. He calls it Gemma.
He calls Gemini Gemma? Oh, I did not know
That
this.
process you just described, he goes through that process every morning. He wakes up and he asks Gemma certain questions and has a full conversation with Gemma as it pertains to whatever projects he has coming up.
Yeah, I don't think I'm not sure I want to do that often. Maybe that might become a thing in the future. And I have spoken to AI with voice to text in the past, but not like this, where I basically was like in the middle of the conversation, I was like, I'm not sure about this. And it was very, very conversational. Anyway.
Let's hear what Gemma had to say.
Yeah. Yes, let me just take Julian Rogers' name. So here's what Gemma had to say. Gemma had to say, so I spoke to Gemma. I'm calling Gemma now. I'm calling Gemini Gemma now. Why? I spoke to Gemini about the CEO thought leadership model. And based upon, this is like a summary. So we had a long conversation and I asked Gemini to summarize it afterwards. So it says the goal is to provide a white glove video production service for CEOs to build organic influence on LinkedIn. And I focus on LinkedIn in particular, right? Mm-hmm. And the product is 2 to 4 high quality thought leadership videos per month. The commitment is long-term 1-year contracts built for consistency. The objective is not just views, but strategic engagement with industry peers and potential partners to foster business relationships. And the platform is primarily LinkedIn. So that is the summary they gave me. And also, they gave me an operational framework. And the operational framework was from concept to LinkedIn feed. It says, to make this scale, your team needs a repeatable assembly line. Here is a 4-step framework. And I remember talking to Gemini about this and kind of chiming in and saying, this is what we could do. And it put it together. It said, strategy and content extraction, the brain dump. CEOs are busy. They won't write scripts, as we have figured out. Your team needs to act as journalists, right? So you have a monthly download, a 45-minute download interview with a CEO. Your strategist asks high-level questions about industry trends, spicy takes, and recent wins. And then you identify hooks, and the team identifies 4 most viral, worthy, or insight-heavy stories from that interview. Now, we don't currently do it like this, but we can do it like this because this model is not something that is new. I know companies that instead of doing separate videos, they do one long interview and then they turn that into shorter form content. That is an option. The second thing it told me is that you must have efficient production, the set it and forget it production. So you do the batch filming once a month. A videographer or a remote director would do that. And it suggested use Riverside or like probably StreamYard like we're using today could probably do it. Mm-hmm. And record all 4 videos in one session. And then it said that post-production editors add LinkedIn narrative styling, burnt-in caption for silent scrollers, and a compelling headline overlay and B-roll for supporting graphics to keep it fast-paced. So basically stuff that we do already, stuff that we know about. The last part is, this is the third part. For distribution, it says a video on LinkedIn is only as good as the text above it. So it's talking now about the caption and doing ghostwriting for it. Mm-hmm. The hook copy your team writes the LinkedIn post in the CEO's voice to accompany the video, which is something we already do, right? For the people we do, CEOs we do videos for. Mm-hmm. And scheduling. Posts are scheduled during peak industry hours, usually Tuesday to Thursday mornings. Well, that is not something that we care about too much. You can post whenever you feel like, right? And the last thing is that relationship management, the engagement piece. Since the goal is building relationships, which it picked up from what I was saying, you can't just post and ghost. Inbound management, your team monitors the comments, which is something we always say. They flag high-value prospects or peers so that the CEO can personally jump in and reply, or the team drafts light replies for approval. And then we have outbound tagging relevant industry leaders or partners in the comments to start a conversation. And then it goes on to describe the team rules needed and all those different things, which we won't get into. But that is kind of the framework it came up with based on the conversation that I had with it. Yeah.
It seems like it gives you a very good, solid foundation upon which to kind of explore how you develop the product and by extension, how you can develop a marketing agency. So it is a very interesting process that you went through. Some of what I'm hearing seems to be like right on spot. It would have been interesting if some of the conditioning inputs were some of our discussions from the past.
Right. Yeah.
So like if we could, I know we have some recordings and we have some notes, but if we could have like loaded up those conversations and then allow Gemini to not only use its own background, but use our actual words, our actual thoughts to kind of craft it so that it's more relate and not general. Because, you know, Gemini is going to give us a bunch good stuff, but it's going to be very general. And one of the things I've always felt about Relate is that it needs to be, well, it has always been distinctive, and we have to maintain that ability to remain distinctive in whichever industry we get into. So when we were purely photography, we sought to be distinctive by emphasizing our regard for relationship and the importance of relationship in our operations. And that has continued to define us and distinguish us from other competitors, even when we went into video and now we are into production and we're talking about digital marketing agency and new products. And I think it's very important to have that distinctive, unique voice and unique view that you could then use, not just to differentiate ourselves, but we can use that to help clients differentiate themselves from their competitors.
Yeah, I think that's good. One of the things that you just said that really stood out to me is the fact that even though you're talking with these AI agents, even if they produce something for you, you simply just cannot take that wholesale. You as a company have to know what your differentiators are and put those things back into the structure. So there's one level at which you just ask it a question. There's another level at which you have a conversation. And there's another level at which you have the conversation, you get all the results, and then you still come back in afterwards, go through and customize it to match the ethos, the positioning, the messaging of your company and whatever your particular emphasis is. Even though some of that will come out in the conversation if you have a good one, as you said, it would still default towards something generic unless you add those things afterwards to make sure it's differentiated. So that's a very, very good point.
Right. What would you say, having gone through that process and having thought about it, what would you say the answer to your question is, which is, should we become a digital marketing agency? An addendum to that is, what's the difference between that and what we do now?
That's a really, really good question. And I did ask the question in my conversation with Gemini, it did identify after looking at the website that it seems like you're doing some of this stuff already, right? But it did, when I asked it to define what a digital marketing agency, it did lean more into things like SEO and some performance marketing and things that were more heavy on the like, I guess, the data and technical side, I guess.
Yeah.
And I was telling the agent that we are more on the organic storytelling, relationship building side and helping people with that. And so I redirected it away from those things. So I was wondering, I began to wonder, should we start to do more stuff in SEO? Should we do performance marketing? Should we start to run ads? And I don't know that we'll ever do that. Maybe we might not. But it seems that we are just a different branch in a tree of digital marketing. Mm-hmm. And so it was kind of identifying that. And and I'm okay with that. I'm comfortable with that definition, and maybe in the future we could expand more and see what else we could add to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's good. All right, Ayinde, I think that was good. Well, what do you want to talk about today? Let's see what you have on the table.
Well, your conversation started with walking. I'm going to borrow a little bit from that and start with hiking. So this weekend I was hiking, not so much a walk, more of a hike. So it was a hike from Santa Cruz over into Maracas Bay. Sounds harder and longer than it actually is. I think where we started off was a little bit of an elevated position. So the gradient up the hill was pretty shallow. It wasn't too steep. So I went with some kids and they all made it. Some of the kids were like 11 and they made it. So definitely, it wasn't that difficult. But interestingly, one of the guys on the hike was a CEO of a company, actually one of our clients. I'm not going to say who, but he had on Meta shades.
Or Meta glasses?
Meta glasses, yeah. I didn't realize he had the Ray-Bans Meta glasses. I just thought they were just Ray-Bans, but the only time is if you're looking at him and he's recording, because then the light will come on, which is a feature, a social cue feature that Meta added that Google Glass didn't have, which is partly why people didn't like Google Glass, because it looked a little creepy. It could be recording and nobody would know. So Meta added that so you would know if somebody's recording. Anyway, that leads into the conversation because I was looking, subsequent to that, I was looking on Facebook, and I noticed Maxine Williams. Now, most of us will know Maxine Williams. If you grew up in Trinidad in the 90s, 2000s, you know Maxine Williams from variety of things on television, either hosting something. She used to be on Westwood Park, very intelligent, has multiple degrees. She's now at Meta/Facebook. And I have noticed content from her on Facebook coming up more and more. And one of the pieces of content that led me to thinking about this topic idea was she was recently in Trinidad for Carnival, because apparently she's big on Carnival. So she was here for Carnival. So this particular video that she did, she was actually wearing a collaboration, not with Ray-Ban and Meta, but with Oakley and Meta, which I didn't know existed. So here you have a employee of a company creating content about one of the products for the company, but they're doing it in a very organic way, because what she talked about is, I normally wear the Ray-Ban Metas, but I wear these when I exercise, but I also wear these when I go to FETs, because at FETs you may have water. And so she's talking about the benefits of wearing the Oakleys because they are more weatherproof, they have longer battery life, they have a louder speaker so that they're taking calls and so on. So she's talking about the value in this particular product, but from a very personal perspective and on her personal channel. This is not a Meta ad or a Meta channel. She's an employee, yes, but she's talking about it from a personal experience. And so it got me thinking about user-generated content, which we all know about, and we know the impact of user-generated content. But then...
Are you going to show the video?
Oh, yeah, we probably should show that video of Maxine.
I was waiting for a cue to show the video. Let's do that, right? Hopefully it'll come up the way it's supposed to.
So these are the Oakley Meta Vanguard glasses. They do everything the Ray-Ban Meta glasses do with AI. They can answer questions, help you remember where you parked your car, take calls, play music. But these are built different. They are built for movement, for sweat, for water, for moments when stopping is not the point. The sound is stronger, and you can actually hear your music or your call while you're moving, running, riding, dancing in a crowd without needing earbuds. And they have a longer battery life, which matters when you're active for hours. I wear these for sport, but I have to confess, I wear them to parties where water is not a risk, it is the environment. Most tech asks you to protect it. But nah, I am using the tech to let me keep living. And I am so into it.
Yeah, very good. Just a quick plug for Maxine Williams again. One of the people that I really appreciate who maintains their Trinidad and Tobago accent regardless. I mean, Maxine is in Fortune 500 rooms all day, every day. And it doesn't seem as though that accent ever goes away. So big props to Maxine Williams, just keeping the Trini accent. No shade on anybody who has to code switch, but definitely I appreciate hearing that accent when I'm online. So yeah, so that's exactly what I was talking about. So that's a very good example of employee generated content. I think it works, and I'm just going to talk about so many things I think about it, and then I can get some feedback from you, Juma. I think it works because it feels authentic. And we know that one of the themes for 2026 is going to be authenticity. If you're creating content that feels fake, it's not going to work. People want to engage with content, or will choose to engage with content that is authentic, that is truthful. And this is what you get from a lot of employee generated content, especially if it seems as though they really enjoy being employed by that particular company, and they've really enjoyed being part of the process of creating content. So this is Maxine Williams talking about something that she actually uses, one of the products of the company. And she tells you exactly, and it's authentic. You know that she comes here for Carnival. So when she mentions Carnival, it makes sense. And it registered. So employee generated content helps to build that trust. It gives you real relationships, because then people could kind of connect with who that person is, as opposed to just a brand message. They connect with the beliefs of this particular person. And just to drop a statistic before you jump in, Juma, some research has shown that employee generated content can generate as much as 800 times more engagement than traditional content from business.
One of my grouses with this genre of content, and I'm going to put Maxine's video in two categories at the same time. I'm going to put it in the category of user-generated content and also employee-generated content, because she did both. She's a user of the product. She just happens to be employed by Meta, so it's also employee-generated content. And part of my problem, and again, let's talk about authenticity. Part of my problem with user-generated content these days is that it just now falls in the category of influencer marketing. Right. It's no longer what it used to be. User-generated content was the lady whose, I think, her car burned down and her Stanley Cup survived. Right. She didn't set her car on fire to make sure the Stanley Cup survived. It actually happened to her, and she went on and she spoke about it. And then that helped fuel the fire, no pun intended, to making Stanley Cups a very popular cup.
A woman's Stanley tumbler survives a car fire, and now the company's going to replace her ride.
This viral video has been viewed 60 million times. The woman's car inside is completely destroyed, but her Stanley survived without a scratch. It still even had ice in it. The company's motto is their product is, quote, built for life, and they are putting their money where their mouth is. Stanley's president offered to send the woman some new cups and a new car.
Right? And that was genuine user-generated content. User-generated content now is find some influencer, give them the product, let them use it, and let them report back, which I think is anti-authentic, really, to be honest. So I don't categorize as user-generated content. That's influencer marketing as far as I'm concerned. Now, to talk about what Maxine did, is that yes, one could probably say that because she's in the company, she will have good things to say. But I don't get that feeling that she was doing it because the company might like her to do it. I get the feeling that she used anything and it's a real experience and she wanted to talk about it, you know? And I would say too that when she did talk about it, the thing that made it different to the Ray-Bans is that it was made for movement and it was made to resist all these elements. It's like a sports glasses. That's why it's branded Oakley. Right. So I think employees doing that is excellent once it's authentic, once there's not a mandate internally, go and use this product and make a video about it. It has to be organic because employees are not going to champion a company unless they really believe in the company. And I think that's a big part of how this type of content has to be done. It has to be I really like the company I work for. If I work for Audi, I only drive Audis. I love their cars, right? And I can make a video about it because every single car for the last 10 years I've had has been an Audi or something like that, to that nature.
Right.
So I think that is very important when thinking about employee-generated content.
Yeah, I think you're highlighting one of the issues with employee-generated content that companies will have to pay attention to, which is how do we get organic, authentic user employee-generated content? Because as you pointed out, and I agree, if it feels contrived, it's not going to work. It then moves into a different category. And what you have happening is that some of the promised benefits of 800% more engagement doesn't actually happen because it's now moved into a new category of just influencer-based marketing. So what do you think companies can do to generate authentic employee-generated content? Like what do you think has to be in place?
Well, first of all, the company itself has to have a good internal brand. Like the employees has to believe in the company. They have to believe in the company because there are some people working for companies and they're working to get paid. They don't believe in the company they're working for. I will never, ever, ever, ever share content from a company I don't believe in. Let me tell you how bad I am.
Oh, good.
Let me tell you how good. Let me tell you how bad I am with it, right? If I don't like your logo, I'm not going to use your product. That's how bad it is for me, right?
There might be a little bit of graphic artist snobbery coming out there, which I am totally on board with. Trust me, I'm there with you. I hear what you're saying.
Right. So it's at that level. So imagine further to that, if I just don't like the company culture, or I don't believe in the products, or the CEO is a terrible person, and not the public facing part of it. But these things I know because I'm in the company internally, and I could see and hear things that other people, the consumers, can't see and hear. Then I will never, ever, ever share that. So that's the first and primary thing, that the company has to have a good brand, must be trusted internally first, right? Before any employee wants to even share the thing that they have. Secondly, I think it has to have a good product. The product just has to be good. And companies have to encourage their employees to use their products, or it might be a service. Right? I remember so Men's Warehouse was one example of that, where the CEO used to only wear Men's Warehouse suits, and he used to say, "You love how you look," or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then there's another thing for men where hair grows. I don't know if it's Rogaine or something else. And the president was saying, "I'm not only the president, but I'm a client as well." Mm-hmm. Right. And so there are instances where people believe in a product or service and they just use it because it's good, mm-hmm. you know? And if you have the correct internal brand and culture, which means the employees trust you, respect you, all those different things, and you have a good product, a good service, then, and it fits the needs of an employee, then you have that working together, and employees will generate authentic employee-generated content.
Yeah, I think you highlighted a couple of things there that we probably should take note of. And one of them, it needs to have a strong internal brand, which ties together with envisioning. If you are the CEO of a company, you're the visionary leader of a company, your job is to make sure everybody in the company is on board with the vision and has been imbued or infused with the vision. So it's actually part of them, not something written in an employee handbook. So you need to have a strong internal brand. You need to be envisioned. You need to have a great product that not only will be pushed by employees, as in they will try to sell it because that's their job, but they actually are willing to use it and be proud users of the product. So they will wear branded items. So if they will wear branded items, they'll probably share content or probably create content. So you want a great product that people are going to be proud of. And then the other thing that I think is being highlighted, the employees just need to have a positive experience as the starting point. Mm. You can't have a terrible work life and then somebody's coming to you and say, "Oh, we want to create employee-generated content." Then it might backfire. Because the employees might speak the truth, and the truth mightn't be flattering for the company. So companies need to think about how And I always say this, you can't ask employees to offer good customer service unless you give good employee service. You have to take care of employees so that they can feel proud of representing the company. How do you think companies can incentivize employee-generated content?
I don't think there's any way to, because from a psychological perspective, people who get things to do things don't do it honestly. And that has been proven. So like, for example, if you want to do a survey and you give them like a discount card to do a survey, the survey is never filled out as honest as it could be. So I think incentivize, the word could be interpreted in different ways, but it's almost has the understanding that the employees receive something to do something. Right. It might not be that, but what should happen is that you just treat your employees better. You just treat them better. And you give the option of doing this. You make them aware that this is something that you could do. But if you try to put a real formal plan in place for that, I don't think it ever really comes across as authentic. And to the public, it might feel that way, but that would feel kind of slimy. If I had to do that as a CEO and I had a product and I had to kind of coerce people into doing that, that wouldn't sit well with me. I'd feel bad. Although at certain levels, when money gets involved, some people don't care, right? But in terms of incentivizing, and let's take it from the good perspective now, in terms of encouraging, making people feel comfortable with making that choice, you just have to treat people better. There's no money, there's no perks, there's no benefits that you could give them that will cause them to be more authentic. That has been disproven according to psychology and brain science.
Yeah. I think one of the things that can help with that, and I agree with the corrupting potential of certain types of incentives. I agree with that. So that's kind of like what you're saying. There's a corrupting potential. If you say, okay, do you user-generated content, I'll pay you extra. It may then lead to a bunch of inauthentic and almost like a Diana Empowerment for our Trinity listeners. They're almost like a Diana Empowerment ad, which is no shade to Diana Empowerment, but some of those ads are not authentic.
Yeah, I mean, that's the funny thing about them. You can tell,
Yeah, they do make them memorable, however, so they are very memorable. But what I was going to say is, if you can, one of the incentives I think could be just make it a good experience to create content for the company, like make it fun, make it engaging. One of the things companies shouldn't do is expect employees to be responsible for the content.
Okay.
So in other words, there's room for hiring professionals. So either internally or you're bringing in a company like ours to help with that process. So script writing and actual filming and editing, so that it doesn't become a second job for employees. Because if you make it a second job, employees are going to get very cynical very fast. And it's like, well, why am I doing this? I still have to go back to the office and do my work. Nobody helping me do my work. So if you, one, make it fun, but two, also make sure there are structures and things in place like external consultants or external production companies that can take ownership of the end product so that employees can participate freely and in a way that's enjoyable to them.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a good way to approach it. Yeah, they can't force people to do it. They have to want to be a part of the thing. And very important. Okay, so what did we learn today, Ayinde?
Well, as usual, if we start from the back, go up. One of the things we learned is that employee-generated content could be a very powerful tool for your company, driving engagement, driving relationships, building trust. But there are some pitfalls that you have to be careful about. You don't want to incentivize incorrectly. You also want to ensure that employees have a good experience, good office experience, good workplace experience, so that they would be proud and willing to represent the brand publicly and associate with the brand publicly. But they're your first customers. So you need that loyalty from them if you're going to ask customers to demonstrate that same level of loyalty. So organic UGC helps or comes from, not just help, but comes from a strong internal brand and strong belief in that internal brand. You have to have a great product. And most of all, the employee experience has to be positive. That's the starting point. If you don't have a positive employee experience, you can't really go around asking them to make authentic content.
Yeah. Agreed. Right. What did I learn? What did we learn on my side? I think that even if you are having a conversation with any large language model, any AI agent, when you are done having that conversation and you are done talking to the agent about whatever you want, particularly if it's something for your company, you want to be able to go back afterwards and make sure that you add in the things about your company that makes it unique. Add in your messaging, add in your positioning, add in all those different things, because no matter how much detail you give the AI agent, it will still come up with a somewhat generic response, even if you talk to it about specific things, because it doesn't have a lot of the information that you would have in order to make something stand out. So if you are dealing with AI, dealing with an AI agent, dealing with some type of model, unless you train it on specifically a company's content, that's another thing where you could do this walled off, like these days there's CloudBot, where you could have a special computer which is only your company data and train it that way, where it will be more accurate in that way. But I still think even in that case, you have to go check it to make sure that it is the thing that you feel is right, and that you don't just implement something without making sure it's in alignment with who your company is and who you want people to see you as. That's the first thing. And the second thing I would say we learned today is that we are kind of like a digital marketing agency, just not in some ways, and in other ways we are. And maybe in the future we'll dip our toes deeper into those things. When I actually have a discussion, I would, I'll have to leave out Gemini for a while, leave Juma, and have a discussion with Ayinde.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, thanks people for joining us today on It's Good to Relate, and we'll see you very, very soon.
Thank you. Have a good day, and bye.